afternoon, and we are going to do some Parsha today. So, there was once a non-Jewish gentleman that met his friend Abelard, and he says, Abelard, tell me something. Why is it that every question which I ask a Jewish person, they always answer with a question? To which Abelard promptly replied, well, why not? So, we're going to start a weekly class in the city in the CBD on the Parsha. So if you would like to take part, if you'd like to join, just get in contact with us and we shall give you the details of where it will be. One of the important classes, one of the important stories which I heard, which is a very, very fundamental story, was told over by a lady by the name of Rabbi Salebtitsky. And Rabbi Salebtitsky, she gave this story in the beginning when Nashei Chabad, when the organization that runs all of the women's activities for Chabad, it was established many, many years ago. So they held a function in Detroit. And there in Detroit, they went for a few days, and they were planning on flying back on Saturday. They were planning on coming back to for Shabbat in New York. They arrived at the airport, and in that time there was only one plane that went to New York every day from Detroit. And sadly, there was a problem with the plane. There was a storm or something like that, and they got stuck at the airport. And they didn't know what to do. They thought to themselves, what's going to be for Shabbos? Hundreds of women, of Rebbitzins, what are their families going to do without them for Shabbat? And so they're very, very worried. And so they gave a call into the Rebbe's secretary to be able to give over to the Rebbe that they did this function and etc., but now that they're stuck in the airport in Detroit. And so they called, Rebbe Popak, she called Rabbi Klein, and she said please tell the Rebbe that we're stuck at the airport in Detroit. And Rabbi Klein came back to the phone and said, the Rebbe wants to try to understand what does it mean stuck at the airport. And so she said, we're stuck here. She tried to say takua in Hebrew and English, different languages. And Rabbi Klein, he laughed and he says, no, the Rebbe, of course, knows what the meaning of the word stuck is. But the Rebbe is asking, what do you mean you're stuck in the airport? You're not stuck in the airport. From the divine, from Hashem. Hashem made sure that you should be there. Hashem created that situation that you should be able to be there. And so therefore, obviously, there are other Jewish people that are in the airport. I'm sure that you could give out Shabbos candles. I'm sure that you could speak to people about their faith, about whatever it may be. But you're certainly not stuck in the airport. And so Rabbi Popak, she says, wow, what a perspective. And so she told all the women what the Rebbe just said. And so all of the ladies got out of their bags, their Shabbos candles and different things, and they started going around finding Jews in the airport. And for the next few hours, they took care of all of the spiritual needs of all of the different Jews that they met. And Rabbi Salebtitsky, she says that they're still in connection. They still have a relationship with some of the people that they met there at the airport. Some are now keeping Torah mitzvahs, keeping Shabbos, doing all of these things, and all because of this idea that they thought they were stuck. Now, I want to share with you an idea that we learned from this week's Parsha, and it's probably one of the sad stories which we have in the Torah, one of the very difficult ones to understand, and that is the story of Hagar. We know that Abraham married Sarah, and when they went down to Egypt, so Abraham picked up there a shifcha, a maid, Hagar, and came back to the Holy Land of Israel. And Sarah, obviously she wanted to have a child, but she realized that she wasn't blessed with a child. And so she thought maybe if she allows her husband to have a child with Hagar, maybe that should be able to bring a blessing into their home, and they should be blessed. And that's what she did. She had a child, and of course that is Yishmael. Now in this week's Parsha, we already learned that Sarah was blessed with a child, and was blessed with a child Yitzchak. And Sarah saw that Ishmael was a very bad influence on Yitzchak. And so therefore she didn't want that Hagar, the maidservant, with her child, should be around her family. And so she said to Avram, she says, darling, with all due respect, but I see that Ishmael's a bad influence. I want you to send Ishmael and Hagar away. I don't want them here in the house. Abraham was very saddened by this and says, how can I send? This is my flesh and blood. This is my child. How can I send them away? They should be sent. Who's going to take care of them? So he asked Hashem, and Hashem says, whatever your wife Sarah tells you to do, that's what you should do. So Abraham reluctantly takes her and sends her on the way. Now, it tells us that she was going back and forth, and she was wandering on the way, and she ended up coming to a situation where the water's finished, and she realizes, my son is going to die because he doesn't have any water to drink, and so it's better that I shouldn't see him die, so she decided to put him behind some bushes. And at that moment, an angel came to her and told her everything's going to be fine, and tells her that she should return, that everything's going to be good, and that Hashem will take care, and her son will end up growing up and be a great nation. It says that then she saw that there was water, and she gave her son to drink. Now, there's an interesting midrash which says, what does it mean that she was wandering on the way? So the midrash tells us that she went back to worshipping idols, like she did in her father's home before she met Abraham. Now, of course, the question is where on earth does the midrash get this idea that from wandering around on the way, you need to understand her situation. She was sent out of her home. She doesn't know where she's going. She doesn't know what she's doing. So why on earth would we come and we say that she suddenly went and worshipped idols? She was struggling. It was a difficult situation. She had a child. She didn't know how to care for the child. Why is that so bad? What is it wondering that therefore she was worshipping idols? So there's an interesting Hasidic story which is told about one of the great Rabbanim of Europe, Rabbi Mordechai, that he needed to go to Kovna. In order to go to Kovna, he needed to go through Minsk. And so he went on the train, and there on the train he met another Heilig Yid, another frum gentleman. They started speaking, and they realized that he's also a rabbi, he's a sheikhet, he's a moel. And so they had a nice conversation. Now, of course, they both nodded off a little bit, and sadly, they slept a little bit too long, and they ended up missing the train stop in Minsk. And so there, when they woke up, they realized, what are we going to do? And so this other gentleman, he says, Baruch, how are we ever going to get back to where we are? This is such a mistake. This is such a problem. And Rabbi Mordechai, he says to him, Rabbi Yid, there's not a problem. There's no mistake here. Let's get off at this stop. And Shabbat we'll spend in this town. I'm sure we'll find a Jewish person which is there. So they went into this small little town, and there they asked around, is there anyone Jewish? And they says, of course, we know someone Jewish. They sent him go here and here, so they ended up going there. As they arrived at the house, they asked him, can we stay here with Shabbat? He says, certainly. He says to them, both of you look like you're rabbis, both of you look like you're learned people. Tell me, I've got a problem. My wife and I, we were blessed 7 days ago with a child, with a baby boy, and we invited a moel to come and to do the bris. But sadly, he wasn't able to arrive, and so we don't know what to do. We have a bris. So this Yid, he comes and he says, well, I'm a moel. I can take care of it. He says, wow. And he says, and I bought a young cow in order that we should be able to have a meal. Would anyone happen to be a sheikhet? He says, of course I'm a sheikhet. He says, well, what about a sandak? I need a revered Yid to be a sandak for my child. He says, well, you've got Reb Mordechai here. He could be the sandak. And so Reb Mordechai turns to this Rebbe Yid and he says, you honestly think that we made a mistake? You honestly think that we missed the stop, therefore it's a mistake? This is perfect. This is exactly where we need to be. Here we have a child that needs a bris. We have a moel, we have a sandak, we have a sheikhet, and everything is sorted. We don't ever make mistakes. Wherever we are is never a mistake. And this is where we come to understanding what it was that happened with Hagar. Hagar, with all due respect, and understanding her difficulty. And many times we find ourselves in that same situation in which we're wandering around. We're not sure why we're in a particular situation. We're not sure why we've arrived at a particular place. We're wondering. We're looking around. For what purpose? What's the idea? And when we recognize that, well, there isn't any reason or any purpose, it's at that moment that we end up going to worship idols. It's at that moment that we end up getting ourselves into mistake. It's that moment that we become disheartened. We lose focus. We lose meaning. We lose purpose. What does she do? Out of depression, she takes a child and she puts him on the side. I can't even bear to see my child die. Now let's understand this idea a little bit. If I were to ask you a question, all right, most people are blessed to have a watch on their hand. Now, what came first? Was it the idea that we need something to tell us time, that therefore we have the watch? Or was there a watch and we says, oh, wow, this watch can tell us the time? Obviously, we understand that we had the purpose. How are we going to tell the time? So therefore, we need to create something which is going to enable us to tell the time. It's not that we found a pen and we thought, what can I do with this pen? Maybe I'll write with it. But rather, we needed an apparatus that we should be able to write with. And so therefore, we created the pen. So we recognize that before we create something, there has to be a purpose. There has to be a meaning. There has to be an ideal which is created behind it. We know Hashem created the world. And within this creation that Hashem created the world, many people think that Hashem created the world. He saw that humans need some guidance. And so therefore he says, well, let me come and give them the Torah. Let me come and give them some ideas. Let me come and give them some ethics, some morals, some laws. To which, of course, anyone with a little bit of logic realizes that that's not the case. Hashem had the Torah. Hashem had the purpose. Hashem had the ideal. And it's this ideal that Hashem created the world for. To give us the Torah, to give us this meaning, to give us this purpose. It's not that I look to myself, you've a baruch, I don't have anything to do with my life. You know what? I think Judaism might give me some meaning. It's the opposite. I have this meaning which is called Judaism, and my life is the vessel that I'd be able to use for it. When Hashem created the world, what were the two major things which Hashem created? He created this thing called space, a place. He created direction. He created this room, this area in which we could be. And Hashem created time, that we should have a before, a now, and a later. That in that particular time, we're able to use for the purpose of our creation. And so therefore, the creation of time and space is, in essence, is the vessel where we are able to do and we're able to use and we're able to show the purpose of its existence. And so therefore, running along these lines, we understand that if there is a place which was created, that place was created for a purpose. If there is a time which was created, I find myself in a particular time, it was for a purpose. So at the moment I find myself in the CBD, I thought to myself, well, what am I doing here in the city? Obviously, it's for a purpose. So here, let's have a shiur Torah. Let's have some learning. Now, why did I choose this time? Well, it's a time of lunchtime where people are free to be able to listen to an idea. And so therefore, this is the perfect, purposeful time to be able to have it. Not just a time of a break where we don't need to do anything, but rather we can fill that time with purpose and meaning. For that reason, it was created. When Yaakov was running away from his brother, Yaakov was fleeing his brother. Esav wanted to kill him. He didn't know where he was going, what he was doing. He felt hated by his own flesh and blood. And it says, V'yivga b'makom. It says that he bumped into a place. What does it mean he bumped into a place? So he was there on Har Moriah and he went to sleep. And there when he went to sleep, he had the dream of the ladder going up, in which the angels were going up and down. And he wakes up in the morning and he says, I didn't know this, but I found God in this place. Now, the story is a very interesting story because he says that he bumped into this place, meaning as if he came there haphazardly. But the Midrash comes and tells us that, in essence, God made the sun set earlier to be able to make sure that that's where he should sleep. He should sleep at Har Moriah. And of course, when he woke up in the morning, he was in that place. He says, in this place I found God. What does that mean when he says, in this place I found God? Yaakov was in a very vulnerable situation. It was a very difficult situation. And of course, he bumped into us, but he found himself in this situation. He didn't ask to be put in the circumstances. Okay, possibly he did a few actions and the consequences which he had possibly reflect upon this particular idea. But he certainly didn't want it. He didn't want to be in the place that he was, not only in the physical place in which he had to be running away from home, but also in that mental space in which he was chased. And so therefore, he found himself haphazardly. But Hashem made sure that he should be there. And through that experience which he had there, he realized that even in that place of difficulty, of despair, even in that place in which he feels hated, even in that place in which he feels chased, even there, in that place, he's able to find God. And this, of course, is that same message which we have, that we need to recognize that if there is a place, if there is a time, that means that Hashem is there. And sometimes that could be in the greatest of despairs. I could feel no one likes me. I could feel that I'm losing all of my money. I could feel struggling with my health, struggling with different issues, whatever it may be. We need to remind ourselves, like Yaakov, we need to find Hashem in that place. If Hashem has created that time and space, it's a sign that God is there. And this is the interesting thing which the Rambam writes about Hagar. It says that out of despair, she throws her child over to the into the bushes, and she sits there, and the angel comes to her and tells her, Hagar, don't worry, your son's going to be okay, everything's going to be fine. And then it comes and it says that she saw the water. Now, the Ramban comes and it says there was absolutely no miracle here. There was no miracle that she came and she saw the water. And why? Is it because if there was bushes, and the bushes are growing and they're green, it's a sign that there's a source of water. But it was simply because she was in such despair that she wasn't able to see the water which was next to her. She was so overwhelmed in her own mess, in her own pain, in her own difficulties, that she wasn't able to see the water that was right there in front of her. And it was only after that she was reassured by Hashem that everything is going to be fine. It was that moment she was able to see the water that was right there in front of her. And I'm sure if we all think about different experiences in our lives, different moments, different places that we were, different times that we were, and we found ourselves in despair, we were so overwhelmed with the difficulties, with the hardships of the different things which were taking place in our life, we weren't able to see that the answer, the salvation, the help was right there in front of me. All I needed to do was open my eyes, not to be so self-consumed in my own issues, in my own problems. And this, of course, is like Yaakov, that even in that space, he was able to find Hashem, he was able to find the divine, he was able to find the purpose, the meaning which was hidden, embedded inside of it. There's a very interesting story which I just heard. And the story is about the Rebbetzin from Nepal. In Nepal, there is a Chabad house, one of the most famous Chabad houses in the world, with all of the travelers which go through there, Rabbi Chesky and Hannah Lifshitz. They are angels. Can't say any other word for it. The way that they help, the way that they do things for people, unbelievable people. Sadly now, because of Corona, because of the COVID, so they had to leave Nepal, and they're currently in Israel, because of course no one is traveling there anymore at the moment, but obviously they will return in the next few months. But around about 6 or 7, 8 months ago, Chani Lifshitz, she tells the following story, that they were staying in Jerusalem and she was walking down Balfour Street. Now, before the previous election, anyone that's aware of Israeli politics, they know that every night there were protests there outside the Bibi, the Prime Minister's home. And so, of course, with all of these people that were protesting, she was walking down, and there was a lady that comes from the protests, and she sees Chani, she sees that she's a Haredi, she's an ultra-Orthodox person, and she starts to yell and scream, here, look, Here we have one of those Haredis. Here we have one of those ultra-Orthodox people. They're the people that cause us all of our problems. They're the ones which bring COVID. And they start yelling and screaming at her. And Hani, she was taken back. What is she going to do in this moment? And she said she had a choice. Is she going to observe the moment and simply be taken by it and overwhelmed by it? Or is she going to realize that 1 second, if she was the one that was put here, it's a sign that she has the best way of coming and dealing with it. And she decided that she's going to be a player, that she's going to find her purpose at this moment. This place was created to find the divine. She looks at this lady and she puts a big smile on her face. And she says to her, I notice that on your bag, you have a chain, a keychain, and you have something from India. And she says, yes. What does that mean to you? She says, well, do you want more like that? I can organize for you some more. And she says, why would you have any more like that? She says, well, I live there. I live in Nepal. And this lady that's just been yelling at her, she stops. And she says, what do you mean you live in Nepal? Who religious people live in Nepal? She says, no, I've got the Chabad house there in Nepal. She says, what? You're Rebbetzin Lifshitz? And she says, yes, I'm Rebbetzin Lifshitz. This lady, she stops and she says, a year ago, my son was in Nepal. And my son, he was hiking in the mountains and he slipped and tripped and he ended up breaking his ribs. And Rabbi Chesky organized a helicopter to fly to be able to come and save my son. And then whilst I was healing, the Rebbetzin and you cooked the only thing my son could eat, and that was hot soup. You were the one that cooked it for him. I can't believe that I'm meeting you. I feel so bad that I just did what I did to you. So appreciative of what you did for my son. And of course, they hugged and they stayed in connection. And of course, Hani forgave her. Of course, she forgave her. She's that type of beautiful person. But it's these stories, it's these things in which we need to recognize that if I find myself in a situation, in an awkward situation, a difficult situation, in that place, in that space, I need to realize 1 second, it was created for a purpose. The purpose was created even before it existed. And that's the reason why it exists. And that was the idea that Hani realized. 1 second. This lady, she's yelling and screaming at me, but I don't need to just observe it. I can be a player in this whole interaction. I can take this situation, this place, this time, and I can turn it into a boat. I can show what is the real purpose behind it. And this is what she did. In the Ethics of Our Fathers, there's an interesting term. It says, Ohevet hamakom. A person needs to love the makom. Now, hamakom in Hebrew refers to God, and it also refers to the place. One of the names which we have for God is hamakom, and its proper translation is the omnipresent, meaning that God is in all places, is everywhere. But hamakom also means the place. And so, of course, in the Ethics of Our Fathers, where it says, Ho'evet hamakom, you need to love the place. What does it mean you should love your place? It means that in every place which I am, I should show it love. I should show it respect. Now, I could be in some difficult places. I could be in some hard places. It's here that I says, yes, you need to love that place. You need to realize that that place was created for a meaning, was created for purpose. And I need to utilize it. Because Hashem is the omnipresent. He is everywhere. If there is a place, it's a sign that was created for my use, for my ability to use it for good things. And I'll finish off with this story about Rabbi Sachs. Being that it's Rabbi Sachs' Yahrzeit on next week. So Rabbi Sachs shared this particular story on many occasions. And this, of course, was in his beginning of discovering Judaism and becoming who he became. He was a university student studying philosophy in Oxford University, I believe. And Rabbi Sachs was questioning. Then Jonathan, a young man, university student, was questioning things. He wanted to be able to find out the truth behind Judaism, the truth behind his faith. So he decided that he is going to go to America and he's going to speak to the top rabbis, the top scholars, and ask them all of his questions. Which, just on the side, I believe that is a very, very good thing to do. And I wish that young people would do that instead of sitting around asking questions, finding excuses for things. Rather, a person actually goes out and seeks professionals, seeks people that know and talks to them, asks them their question. And this is one of the things which Rabbi Sachs always says: if there's someone that you admire, get on a plane and go and visit them, meet them. And this is what Rabbi Sachs did. He decided he's going to America and he's going to speak to all of the top rabbis to discuss with him his questions about faith, about Judaism, about the Holocaust, about everything. Rabbi Sachs arrives in America and he goes around and he meets a lot of great rabbis. He wanted to meet the Lubavitcher Rebbe, but for whatever reason, he wasn't able to organize for him a private audience to be able to go and chat with the Rebbe. He left the number of his aunt and where he was staying, which was on the other side of America, and hoped that maybe there would be time. In the end, they were able to organize a meeting, and he went in to see the Rebbe. And as he went in to see the Rebbe, he sat down and he started asking the Rebbe his questions. And the Rebbe stopped him in the middle of him asking questions. And he says to him, Jonathan, you're learning in Oxford University. In Oxford University, are the Jewish students there? He says, yes, of course, there's lots of Jewish students. Says to him, tell me, what are you doing for the Jewish students in Oxford? What are you doing to help them? What are you doing to get them closer to their Judaism? And Rabbi Sachs, he says he was very taken back. He says to the Rebbe, well, to tell you the truth, in the place that I find myself in, I don't believe that that's an appropriate question. And the Rebbe stopped him and he says, what do you mean the place that you find yourself in? You don't find yourself in places. You put yourself in places. And just like you put yourself in the place where you are, you can put yourself in another place. And this had an unbelievable effect on Rabbi Sachs. He said, first of all of the other rabbis tried to answer my questions, and the Rebbe was the first rabbi that didn't. But not only the Rebbe didn't answer my question, the Rebbe asked me a question. The Rebbe asked me about why, what is my purpose? He gave me a calling. He gave me some meaning. He came and he says, this place which you're talking about, where you find despair, this place where you find questions, this place where you find yourself in that difficult situation. He says, well, what is your calling in that place? What is your place? What is your meaning that you find there? What are you doing for the students in Oxford? And this, of course, was Rabbi Sachs' calling to become what he ended up becoming. And of course, the relationship with him and the Rebbe is well noted. And if anyone wants to find out, just Google it, and you'll be able to see many videos where Rabbi Sachs shares his relationship and how he became the chief rabbi in regard to how the Rebbe helped him. But it is this question which we need to ask. Is the place where I am, what am I doing there? How is that helping me? How am I achieving? I'm not stuck in the place that I'm in. If I'm there, there's a reason, there's an idea behind it. And so therefore, when we go back to the original question, we're not stuck anywhere. Hashem puts us in places, and we can find purpose and meaning in those places. And this, of course, is what Hagar needed to discover, is that she wasn't stuck. She wasn't in despair. She doesn't need to wander around unknowingly and without any purpose, but rather with conviction. Wherever we are, we can go with conviction, with knowing that we're in the right space at the right time. As a parent, many times we can question, and we can think to ourselves, oh yeah, bro, what's the circumstance? Look where my children are, but I can't do anything about it. We need to recognize, no, with conviction, we need to recognize that we're here, and this place, there's also the divine. I may not yet know what I need to do with it, but I need to know that I'm not stuck. It could be in my relationships. It could be in my business. Whatever it may be that I feel stuck, I need to know, no, I'm not stuck. I'm going to go with conviction, and I'm going to endeavor further, because there is purpose and there's meaning to whatever it is that I'm experiencing at this moment. So thank you all for sharing this half an hour class with us in the CBD. If anyone would like to come in person, you're more than invited to come next week. Just contact me regarding the details, and look forward to seeing you.